Hi, very glad to see you on the channel. Before you start listening to the story, write in the comments whether you like the voice on the video. The smell of sizzling steak filled the backyard as I stood at the grill, flipping burgers and ribs while laughter and music echoed through the air. It was a perfect summer evening, the kind of night I had always imagined when Emily and I first got married, a house full of family, good food, and a sense of belonging. But lately, that feeling had been slipping away. Emily was laughing across the yard, surrounded by my family, her smile radiant, her eyes bright. To anyone else, she looked like the perfect wife, charming, warm, effortlessly social. But I knew better. I knew that smile wasn't for me. It hadn't been for a long time. I had spent years trying to ignore the shift, pretending it was just stress, that she still looked at me the way she used to. But the truth was undeniable. I had become an afterthought, a background figure in my own marriage. "Jake, man, you okay?" My brother, Mark, nudged me as he reached for a beer from the cooler. "Yeah," I said, forcing a smile. "Just making sure the steaks don't burn." He raised an eyebrow, clearly not buying it. "You seem tense." I shrugged. "It's nothing." Mark hesitated before leaning in slightly. "Listen, I wasn't going to say anything, but Emily's been acting weird lately." I tensed. "Weird how?" He took a sip of his beer, choosing his words carefully. "Just little things. The way she talks to you in front of people, like she's showing off. It's like she's more focused on making you look bad than anything else." I exhaled through my nose, keeping my gaze on the grill. I know. The sad part was, I had known for a long time. Emily had a habit of belittling me, but she did it in subtle ways, ways that made me second-guess myself. She'd correct me in front of friends, roll her eyes at my jokes, sigh dramatically when I forgot something trivial. But when it was just the two of us, she was cold, indifferent, like I was boring her. And yet, when we were around other people, she played the role of the doting wife flawlessly. It was all an act, and I was tired of being part of her performance. I turned the steaks over, the flames briefly flaring up. "She ever say anything to you?" Mark hesitated again, his jaw tightening. "Not outright, but she makes these little comments about how you don't try hard enough, or how she wishes you had more ambition." I clenched the spatula in my hand. Figures. It was the same thing she always threw at me in private, that I wasn't enough, that I wasn't exciting, that I had somehow failed her without ever knowing how. And yet, I was the one standing here, grilling for her family, making sure her guests were fed, while she wandered the party acting like she was the star of the show. A small voice cut through the noise. "Uncle Jake." I turned to see my nephew, Lucas, running toward me, his little legs carrying him as fast as they could. He stopped just short of the grill, his face scrunched in confusion. "What's up, buddy?" I asked, ruffling his hair. Lucas frowned, looking over his shoulder as if checking to make sure no one else was listening. Then he leaned in and whispered, "Aunt Emily is wrestling two guys upstairs." The spatula slipped from my fingers, clattering onto the grill with a hiss. Mark nearly choked on his beer. "What?" Lucas nodded eagerly. "Yeah, I went to the bathroom, and I heard noises. So I looked inside, and she was with two guys on the bed. I think she was winning." The world around me blurred. The music, the laughter, the smell of barbecue. It all faded into the background. Mark put his beer down slowly. "Jake?" I didn't answer. I didn't think. I just moved. My feet carried me toward the house, up the stairs, my pulse thudding in my ears. The hallway was quiet. Too quiet. I reached for the doorknob and twisted. The door swung open, and there she was. Emily, with her ex-boyfriend, and his best friend. They froze. Emily's eyes widened in sheer panic, her face pale. "Jake!" I held up a hand, cutting her off. I wasn't going to listen to whatever excuse she had prepared. I turned and walked away. Not because I was in shock, not because I didn't know what to say, but because I knew exactly how I was going to handle this. Downstairs, the party was still in full swing. My family, her family, our friends, all of them enjoying the night, completely unaware of what had just happened. I grabbed the microphone from the karaoke machine and tapped it, letting the feedback cut through the noise. The backyard fell silent. Everyone turned toward me. I took a deep breath and smiled. "Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a round of applause to my wife." She's been entertaining not one, but two guests in our bedroom while we cook for her. A wave of gasps spread through the crowd. Then, just as expected, Emily came running outside, half-dressed, her face a mask of horror. No, Jake, wait, but I wasn't done. I reached for the framed wedding photo hanging near the patio, the one she had insisted we display for every event, and pulled it off the wall. Then, with every eye on me, I tossed it into the fire pit. The glass shattered, the flames curling around the edges of the photo, consuming the last piece of whatever we once were. I turned back to the crowd, lifting my beer. Well, I said, smirking, now it's a real barbecue. The silence held for a second longer. Then someone laughed. A sharp, surprised burst of amusement. And then another. And another. The tension cracked, and suddenly, the entire backyard was filled with murmurs, gasps, and whispers. Emily stood frozen, her face crumbling as reality sank in. She had spent years treating me like I wasn't enough. Now, in front of everyone she had tried so hard to impress, she was nothing. And I had never felt stronger. The party had ended in chaos. Emily, humiliated beyond belief, had tried to talk her way out of it, but the damage was done. Her parents had left in stunned silence. Her friends had either avoided eye contact or left outright. And my family? They had rallied around me like I had just won a war. She spent the night at a hotel. I knew because she texted me at 2 a.m. Emily, Jake, please. We need to talk. You shouldn't have done that. You embarrassed me in front of everyone. I stared at the messages for a long moment before turning my phone off. It was incredible. Even now, even after she had been caught in our bedroom with two men while our family was in the backyard, she still thought she was the victim. The next morning, I brewed myself a cup of coffee and sat on the back patio, staring at the blackened remains of our wedding photo in the fire pit. The edges were curled, the faces distorted. A fitting end to a marriage built on lies. Emily returned later that afternoon. I heard the sound of her car pulling into the driveway, followed by hesitant footsteps coming up the porch. The door opened, and she stepped inside, eyes scanning the house like she was expecting to walk into an ambush. She looked rough. Her hair was a mess, her makeup smudged, her usual air of superiority gone. For a brief second, I almost felt sorry for her. Then I remembered the look on her face when I walked into that bedroom. Not guilt, not shame, annoyance, like I was the one inconveniencing her. Jake, she said carefully, setting her purse down. Can we talk? I took a slow sip of my coffee. Depends. Her eyebrows pulled together. On what? I leaned back, my expression unreadable. Are you going to tell me the truth? Or is this going to be another performance? She flinched, but recovered quickly. It wasn't what it looked like. I let out a slow, humorless chuckle. Oh, really? Because what it looked like was you in bed with two guys while our entire family was downstairs. She crossed her arms. You humiliated me. My jaw clenched. You humiliated yourself. She opened her mouth, then closed it. For the first time, she seemed to realize that I wasn't going to roll over and let her manipulate me this time. She shifted tactics. Jake, I made a mistake. I raised an eyebrow. Which time? Last night? Or the dozens of other times I don't know about? Her face paled. Gotcha. I shook my head, standing up. You're unbelievable, Emily. You've spent years tearing me down, making me feel like I wasn't enough, like I was the problem. And the whole time, you were the one sneaking around. She exhaled sharply. You don't understand? No, I interrupted. You don't understand. She hesitated, her eyes flicking to mine, searching for something, maybe a chance, maybe a crack in my anger that she could slip through. But there was nothing left. I exhaled, running a hand through my hair. I want a divorce. The words hung in the air between us. Emily's face twisted. Jake, no, I cut her off. I'm done. You don't get to lie your way out of this. You don't get to manipulate your way into a second chance. We're done. Her breathing quickened. I'll fight it. I smirked. Good luck with that. I turned, walked to the front door, and opened it wide. Pack your things. Get out. Her face contorted with fury, but she didn't argue. She knew she had lost. She stormed past me, stomping up the stairs, slamming drawers, yanking clothes out of the closet. I leaned against the wall, arms crossed, watching as she packed. She shoved designer bags full of overpriced clothes, grabbed her jewelry box, and stuffed random items into a suitcase, her movements jerky and furious. After 30 minutes, she came back down, dragging her things behind her. She stopped in front of me, eyes burning with rage. "You'll regret this," she hissed. I smiled. "Doubt it." She yanked open the door, stomped outside, and slammed it behind her. Silence. I exhaled, rubbing my face. Then, slowly, a smile spread across my lips. Emily was gone. The house was quiet, unnaturally so. No passive-aggressive sighs from across the room. No sarcastic jabs disguised as jokes. No cold, dismissive stares when I walked through the door. For the first time in years, I had peace. But peace wasn't enough. Not yet, because something kept gnawing at me, an unease that wouldn't go away. A part of me knew last night wasn't the first time Emily had betrayed me. It was just the first time she had gotten caught. I had spent years pushing aside my suspicions, convincing myself that I was overthinking things. That of course my wife wouldn't cheat on me. That of course I was just being insecure. Now I knew better, and I needed proof. I spent the morning cleaning up the aftermath of the party. Plastic cups, half-eaten food, chairs scattered around the backyard. But as I moved through the house, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something. Then, as I passed by the closet in the hallway, something caught my eye. A small, black box. It was shoved into the back of the closet, hidden beneath a pile of old sweaters. I frowned, pulling it out. The weight of it felt expensive. I opened the lid. Inside was a brand-new Rolex. Not just any Rolex. A men's Rolex. My stomach dropped. I had never owned a Rolex in my life. Emily had always been the one obsessed with luxury, but she had never once bought me something like this. Because it wasn't for me. I sat down on the edge of the couch, gripping the box in my hands. My mind was racing, connecting the dots. This wasn't just a fling. She had planned this. The watch wasn't just a gift, it was a symbol. A marker of something deeper, something that had been going on for much longer than I had realized. I placed the box on the coffee table and took a deep breath. Emily had lied to me for years. That much was clear now. But how deep did those lies go? I stood up, moving with purpose. If she had hidden this, there had to be more. I searched the bedroom next. Pulled out drawers, checked the nightstand, rummaged through the closet. Nothing. Then I spotted her laptop. Emily was careless with passwords. She had always assumed I wasn't tech-savvy enough to check up on her. I cracked my knuckles, opened the laptop, and clicked on her email. The password field stared back at me. I typed in her usual, Emily 1234. Wrong. I tried our anniversary date. Wrong again. And I typed in something else. A gut instinct. The name of her ex. It unlocked instantly. My stomach twisted, but I pushed past it. I scrolled through her emails, searching for anything unusual. And then, there it was. An email thread with a subject line that made my blood run cold. I can't wait to see you again. I clicked it. It wasn't just one email. It was months of messages. Reservations for expensive hotels. Late-night flights booked to the last minute. Transfers from our joint account to some unnamed recipient. She had been funding her own affairs with our money. I clenched my fists, forcing myself to stay calm. I kept scrolling. And then, at the bottom of the thread, I found a picture. It was taken in a hotel room. Emily was smiling, leaning into a man who wasn't me. He was younger, well-dressed, wearing the exact Rolex I had just found. I stared at the image, my breathing slow and controlled. I had all the proof I needed. Emily hadn't just cheated. She had built a second life behind my back. I closed the laptop and leaned back, my mind racing. I could have confronted her. I could have sent the emails to her family, to her job, to everyone who thought she was the perfect wife. But I wasn't going to do that. Not yet. Because if Emily thought she had seen the worst of me last night, she had no idea what was coming next. I stared at the laptop screen, my heartbeat a steady, controlled rhythm. The emails, the receipts, the picture, it was all there. A blueprint of Emily's betrayal, laid out in black and white. The Rolex had been the key, the crack in the facade she had so carefully built, and now the entire structure of her lies was crumbling before my eyes. I closed the laptop and exhaled slowly. This wasn't the time to act impulsively. Not yet. If I was going to do this, I was going to do it right. I needed a plan. The first step was making sure she had no idea what I knew. I resisted every urge to call her, to text her, to let her hear the satisfaction in my voice. That was what she would expect. A burst of anger, a heated confrontation, a fight she could twist in her favor. Not this time. Instead, I spent the rest of the evening locking everything down. I checked our joint accounts and started transferring my share into a private one. She had taken enough from me. I wasn't about to let her take another cent. The house? That was going up for sale soon. The sooner I cut ties, the better. Next, I made a copy of everything. The emails, the pictures, the financial transactions. I backed it all up onto a secure drive. If Emily wanted to play dirty in the divorce, I was going to bury her in evidence. Then came the fun part. Emily had built her reputation on appearances. The perfect wife, the perfect career woman, the one who had everything under control. I knew exactly how much that image meant to her, which meant I knew exactly where to hit her where it hurt the most. She had spent years tearing me down in private while keeping up the illusion of a perfect marriage in public. Now, I was going to flip the script. I started small. First, I logged into her social media. She had always been careless with passwords, assuming I wasn't tech-savvy enough to ever check. I scheduled a post. Nothing too obvious, just a subtle reminder of what she had done. A picture of the Rolex with a caption, "Funny how things come full circle." Next, I drafted an email. Subject, urgent. Personal conduct concern too. Her boss, dear, boss's name. I wanted to bring a matter to your attention regarding Emily's recent actions. As you know, she has always presented herself as a dedicated professional, but I believe you should be aware of behavior that directly contradicts the values of your company. Attached are records of personal expenses charged to our shared accounts during business trips, expenses that were not related to work. Given the financial implications and ethical concerns, I felt it was my responsibility to inform you before any further company resources are allocated. Best regards, Jake. I attached every single receipt, every hotel booking, every piece of evidence that showed exactly where her company-funded trips had really been going. I hit send. Then, I moved on to the final part of my plan. Emily wasn't just cheating. She was playing a long game, a slow-burning deception that had been going on for months, maybe even years. She thought she had been careful. She thought she had outmaneuvered me. She was wrong. The next morning, I drove to a jewelry store and bought an identical Rolex. Same model, same design, except this one was fake. A high-end replica, indistinguishable to the untrained eye. When I got home, I placed the fake in the same black box where she had hidden the original. And then I waited. Emily was due to come back later that evening. I knew she would want to talk, to try to manipulate the situation, to figure out how much damage control she needed to do. I let her. When she walked in, she hesitated at the door, scanning my face for any sign of what I was thinking. Jake, can we talk? I kept my expression unreadable. Sure. She walked slowly toward me, her body language cautious. I know I messed up, she started, but I don't want to throw everything away. We built a life together. I tilted my head. Have we? She swallowed. Jake, please. I made a mistake. I chuckled, shaking my head. Yeah, a mistake. Just one, right? She flinched, but quickly covered it up. It didn't mean anything. I leaned forward, looking her straight in the eye. Then you won't mind if I get rid of the watch. Her face paled. What? I pulled out the black box and flipped it open, revealing the Rolex inside. This, I said slowly, the one you so carefully hid in the back of the closet. The one that wasn't for me. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. I smirked. You said it didn't mean anything, so you won't mind if I toss it in the fire pit. She lunged for the box. Jake, wait. I snapped it shut just before her fingers could reach it. And that's when I saw it. The panic. Not guilt. Not regret. Panic. She knew. She knew that I knew. And she had no idea how much worse it was about to get. I stood up, holding the box out in front of me. You're not going to talk your way out of this, I said calmly. You're not going to gaslight me or twist this into something it's not. You cheated. You lied. And now, you're going to deal with the consequences. Her breathing was uneven. What are you going to do? I smiled. Wait, And see, she didn't know about the email. She didn't know about the scheduled post. She didn't know that by the time she woke up tomorrow, her entire world was going to burn. And this time, I was going to be the one holding the match. Emily sat frozen, her eyes flicking between the Rolex box in my hand and my face, trying to calculate her next move. I could see the gears turning, the panic building behind her carefully crafted expression. She had spent years perfecting the art of manipulation, twisting words, dodging responsibility, turning every argument back on me until I was the one apologizing for things I hadn't even done. But not this time. I leaned against the counter, studying her. "You look nervous." Her lips parted, but no words came out. I could almost hear the excuses forming, the desperate grasp for control slipping between her fingers. "Jake, I save it," I interrupted. "I already know." Her face paled. "Know what?" I smirked, flipping the Rolex box open again, this time turning it so she could see the watch inside. "This little gift. You thought I wouldn't find it." She swallowed hard. "It's not what you think." I chuckled, shaking my head. "That's the best you've got? It's not what you think." "Emily, I walked in on you with 2 men last night. You really want to try playing innocent now?" Her breathing was uneven, her hands twitching at her sides. I was drunk. It was stupid. It was, "Oh, stop," I said, my voice calm but firm. "Don't insult me with a lie, so weak even you don't believe it." Silence stretched between us. I could see it in her face. She knew the game was up, but she wasn't the type to go down without a fight. She straightened her posture, forcing herself to regain composure. "All right, fine. I made a mistake." I laughed, shaking my head. "A mistake?" I pointed to the watch. "Mistakes don't come with expensive gifts hidden in closets. Mistakes don't involve months of secret emails, hotel reservations, and transactions from our bank account." Her eyes widened slightly before she caught herself. That was all the confirmation I needed. "Yeah," I continued, my voice slow and deliberate. "I went through your laptop." She took a sharp step forward. "Jake, you hacked into my personal— Oh, now you care about privacy?" I let out a dry laugh. "After sneaking around for who knows how long. Now you want to talk about boundaries?" Her jaw clenched. "You had no right. And you had no right to cheat on me in our home." I shot back. "But here we are." She exhaled sharply, gripping the back of a chair. "Jake, listen. I know this looks bad, but you have to understand." "I don't have to understand anything," I interrupted. "You had months, years, to talk to me, to tell me you were unhappy, to be honest. But instead, you chose to sneak around behind my back. You chose to betray me. And now you want to talk." Her face contorted with frustration. "What do you want from me, Jake? An apology? A confession? Fine. Yes, I cheated. There. Are you happy now?" I let out a slow breath, shaking my head. "You think this is about me wanting to hear you say it? Emily, I don't care about your words anymore. They mean nothing." Her nostrils flared, her desperation now laced with anger. She was losing control, and she hated it. "What are you going to do?" she demanded. I tilted my head. "Well, for starters, I already sent a nice little email to your boss. Turns out, companies don't like it when their employees use business trips for personal pleasure." Her face drained of color. "You what?" "Oh, don't worry," I said, my voice mockingly casual. I attached receipts, screenshots, flight confirmations. Just a little light reading for your HR department." She took a stumbling step back, her hands shaking. "Jake, you don't understand. This could ruin me." I smiled. "That's the idea." Her breath hitched, her mask of composure cracking. No. You can't do this. I'll fix this. I can explain." I arched an eyebrow. "Explain what exactly? That you used our money to fund your little affairs? That you lied to your company about your trips?" I leaned forward. "Or that you got caught because a 5-year-old accidentally exposed you?" She shook her head violently, pacing now, her breathing ragged. "This isn't fair. You're doing this out of spite." I smirked. "Oh, now you want to talk about fairness?" Her hands curled into fists. "Jake, you don't have to do this. We can talk. We can work something out." "There's nothing to work out," I said, my tone final. "I already filed for divorce. The paperwork is in motion. You'll be getting served soon." She sucked in a sharp breath. "You what?" I crossed my arms. I'm done, Emily. I don't love you. I don't trust you. And I sure as hell don't want to spend another second pretending this marriage isn't dead. Tears welled in her eyes, but I saw through them. Emily didn't cry for anyone but herself. You can't just throw everything away, she whispered. I let out a slow, measured breath. You already did. She opened her mouth, then closed it. For the first time since this all started, she looked small, defeated. I watched as the realization sank in. Her job? In jeopardy. Her reputation? Shattered. Her marriage? Gone. And me? I wasn't the broken man she had spent years convincing me I was. I was walking away with my dignity, my future, and the knowledge that she was finally feeling the weight of her own actions. Emily let out a shaky breath, backing toward the door. You'll regret this. I smirked. Not a chance. She stared at me for a long moment, searching for something, remorse, hesitation, doubt. She found none. Without another word, she turned and walked out the door, slamming it behind her. The silence that followed was deafening. I exhaled, rubbing a hand over my face. The anger, the betrayal, the humiliation, it was still there, simmering beneath the surface. But there was something else now. Relief. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one scrambling to fix things. I wasn't the one begging for scraps of affection, for basic decency. I was free. And Emily? She was about to learn exactly what it felt like to lose everything. The door slammed behind Emily, and the silence that followed was the loudest thing I had ever heard. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the space where she had been, letting it all sink in. It was over. Not just in theory, not just in my mind, it was really over. A slow exhale left my chest as I raked a hand through my hair. The adrenaline was still wearing off, but beneath it, something new settled in. A lightness I hadn't felt in years. I didn't have to pretend anymore. I didn't have to fight to be seen in my own marriage. Emily was out of my house, out of my life, and soon, out of my legal existence. But that didn't mean she was done trying. My phone lit up almost immediately with messages from her. Emily, you're making a mistake. Emily, I don't deserve this, Jake. Emily, I never wanted things to end like this. Emily, at least talk to me before you make things worse. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. She wasn't messaging because she cared about me. She was messaging because she was losing. I set my phone down and poured myself a drink, letting the burn of the whiskey settle in my chest. For the first time in years, I didn't have to react to Emily's moods, her games, her endless manipulation. She could send 1,000 messages, but they didn't mean anything anymore. The next morning, I woke up to find that Emily had officially moved into the second stage of her crisis. Anger. Emily, you had no right to humiliate me like that. Emily, my family won't even talk to me because of you. Emily, you think you're the victim here? You're pathetic. I smirked as I scrolled through her messages, sipping my coffee. She had spent years making me feel small, making me question if I was good enough. But now she was the one scrambling to get control. I went about my day without responding, but I knew it wasn't over. Sure enough, that evening, there was a knock on my door. I opened it to find Emily standing there, arms crossed, eyes red and tired. She was still wearing the same clothes from the day before, her usual polished look replaced with something much less put together. Jake, she said, her voice softer than it had been in years. Can we talk? I leaned against the doorframe, crossing my arms. Talk about what exactly? She let out a slow breath. About us. I arched an eyebrow. Us? There is no us anymore. Emily. Her jaw tightened. I know I messed up. I laughed, shaking my head. Messed up? You didn't forget to take the trash out. You didn't accidentally trip and fall in a bed with multiple people behind my back. You made choices, Emily. Repeatedly. She shifted on her feet, eyes flicking to the side. I wasn't happy, Jake. I felt my jaw clench, but I didn't let her see it. Oh, you weren't happy? And instead of talking to me, instead of leaving like a decent human being, you decided to lie and cheat. I didn't plan for things to happen like this. I exhaled, rubbing my face. You did plan for it, Emily. I saw the emails, the hotels, the money transfers. You didn't just stumble into this. You chose it. Her face twisted, frustration creeping back into her voice. You act like I'm some kind of villain. I scoffed. What do you think cheating on your husband, using his money, and lying to everyone makes you? A hero. Her hands balled into fists. I gave up a lot for this marriage too, Jake. It wasn't just you making sacrifices. I let out a humorless chuckle. What exactly did you sacrifice? Because from where I'm standing, I was the one who put everything into this while you were out living a double life. Her lips pressed together, and I could see her struggling to come up with a response. Emily had never been good at taking responsibility. Finally, she sighed, her shoulders sagging. I don't want this to turn into a war. I tilted my head. It already is, Emily, and you lost. She flinched. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. You thought you could lie, cheat, and humiliate me without consequences. You thought you could keep your perfect little image intact while I sat here, playing the fool. I exhaled, shaking my head. Well, welcome to reality. She looked away, jaw tight. I want you to leave, Emily. She swallowed, her throat bobbing. Just like that. Just like that. She hesitated for a moment, like she wanted to say something else. But she must have seen the finality in my eyes because, without another word, she turned and walked away. I shut the door behind her, locking it for good measure. I should have felt angry. I should have felt broken. But I didn't. I felt free. Emily would struggle. Her reputation was in shambles. Her job was likely on the line, and her family had finally seen her for who she really was. She had spent so long thinking she was untouchable that she could manipulate and cheat her way through life without consequence. Now, she was alone. I picked up my phone and checked the time. Then I sent a text. Hey, Mark, up for a drink? I need to celebrate. His response came almost immediately. Mark, hell yes. First round's on me. I grabbed my jacket, smiling to myself as I headed out the door. Emily had spent years trying to break me, but she had no idea this was just the beginning of my comeback. The first thing I did the next morning was call my lawyer. Emily had underestimated me for years, treating me like I was naive, like I wasn't capable of handling things on my own. But she was about to find out just how wrong she had been. The office smelled like fresh coffee and paper when I walked in. My lawyer, a sharp-eyed man named Daniel, sat across from me, flipping through the file I had handed him. It was thick, emails, receipts, screenshots, everything I had compiled over the past few weeks. He let out a low whistle. This, he said, tapping the folder, is a brutal case against her. I nodded. Good. I don't want this to be drawn out. I want it over with, and I want it done right. Daniel leaned back in his chair. She's going to fight back. I smirked. Let her try. He studied me for a moment before nodding. All right, here's what we do. For the next hour, we went over the strategy. The assets were split, and since Emily had been using our money to fund her affairs, that would work heavily against her in court. The house would be sold, and I would be walking away with my fair share of everything. She could try to claim emotional distress, but the evidence against her would make that a laughable argument. In custody? I asked. Daniel sighed. That's the only part that could get messy. I tensed. She hasn't even been around for Emma. I know, he agreed, and that works in your favor. But she will try to paint herself as the victim, and courts don't always care about the details. She might push for shared custody, even if it's just to save face. I clenched my jaw. She doesn't deserve shared custody. We'll fight for primary. We have a strong case, but it's going to take time. Time. I exhaled, rubbing a hand over my face. This wasn't just about ending things with Emily. It was about making sure she didn't get to drag Emma through the wreckage she had caused. I left the office with a folder full of legal documents and a determination I hadn't felt in years. Emily had spent so long controlling every part of my life, but now, I was the one calling the shots. By the time I got home, my phone was already blowing up. Emily, you went to a lawyer? Emily, are you serious right now? Emily, Jake, we don't have to do this like enemies. Emily, this is a mistake. I didn't respond. Let her panic. Over the next week, things escalated fast. Emily did exactly what I expected her to do. She played the victim. I got texts from mutual friends, some of whom were clearly trying to test the waters. Sarah, hey, I just wanted to check in. Emily's really upset. Mike, Man, Emily's saying some crazy stuff. What's going on? Vanessa. She's telling people you blindsided her. Just a heads up. I roll my eyes. Of course. She was spinning her own version of events. Emily had always been good at making herself look like the one who had been wronged. She knew exactly how to cry at the right time, how to frame her words to make herself seem like the victim. But this time, people weren't buying it as easily. She's grasping at straws, Mark said over drinks that night. I ran into Sarah, and even she was hesitant about taking Emily's side. And Sarah always defended her. I smirked, taking a sip of my beer. That's because Emily's losing control. Mark leaned forward. How's the custody thing going? I sighed. Still in the early stages, but I'm going for primary. His expression darkened. Good. Emma doesn't need to be caught up in her mess. I nodded. That's the plan. The next week, Emily finally stopped pretending to be civil. She lawyered up. I got the official notice when I walked in my lawyer's office for a follow-up meeting. Daniel handed me a stack of papers, shaking his head. She's contesting the divorce terms. I let out a slow breath. Of course she is. Daniel flipped through the pages. She's claiming she was emotionally neglected, that the marriage was failing long before she stepped out, and that you pushed her away. I let out a bitter laugh. So I made her cheat? That's what she's going with, Daniel confirmed. She's also asking for half of the assets, including the house. I exhaled through my nose. She can ask all she wants. She's not getting it. Daniel smirked. Exactly. Over the next few weeks, the battle intensified. Emily tried everything. She sent long-winded emails about how we could work things out amicably. She tried calling me late at night. When I ignored her, she switched tactics. She posted passive-aggressive things on social media, things she knew mutual friends would see. Some people pretend to be victims while destroying everything in their path. Funny how the people who claim to be loyal are the first to throw you away. She was unraveling, and I was winning. The first court date arrived, and she walked in with her lawyer, wearing an outfit that screamed put-together professional. She barely glanced at me, but I saw the way she clutched her purse a little too tightly, the way her jaw was locked in tension. Her lawyer tried to paint her as the scorned wife, the one who had made a mistake but was still a good person, still deserving of fair treatment. Then Daniel stood up, laid out every piece of evidence, and dismantled every single one of her arguments. When Emily's financial records were shown, specifically how she had used our money for hotels, gifts, and flights, her face turned a sickly shade of white. By the end of it, even her lawyer looked like they regretted taking her case. We walked out of that courtroom, and for the first time since this started, Emily had nothing to say. No angry outbursts. No manipulati, please. Just silence. I stepped outside, taking in the crisp air. Mark was waiting by my car. Well, I smiled. She's losing. His grin widened. Good. And as I looked out at the city and my future without her, I realized something. Thank you for listening to the end. I hope you enjoyed it very much. Don't forget to give a like and tell us in the comments what you would do in such a situation.